Today we visit one of our favorite southeastern gardens to discuss what you need to know to take care of your garden over the winter months. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart in Georgia.
Bring the outdoors into your everyday life. Bass Pro Shops can outfit all your adventures, even those in your backyard. Bass Pro Shops, your adventure starts here.
A preformed hedge unit with 4 plants grown together, ready to plant. Instant Hedge, designed to create a finished look after installation.
The Jaguar F-Pace.
As we say goodbye to the bright colors of fall and transition into the winter and the temperatures begin to drop, plants are preparing for dormancy. While it appears as if all the activity in the garden has stopped, there's a lot going on under the soil until it freezes. Newly transplanted trees and shrubs, divisions of perennials, and hardy bulbs are all growing roots, drawing on soil nutrients and the moisture around them. Even with all this going under the surface, your plants need protection from the cold, frigid weather. With all of this in mind, we visit with Jim Gibbs to get his expert advice on preparing your garden for winter. Jim, thanks for joining us again. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me again.
Jim, we're going to talk about gardening in fall today, and there's so many things that are going on in fall. It's actually kind of a busy time of year for the garden. We have pruning going on, moving plants around. It's also a great time to plant. You know, spring gets all the attention for, this is the best time to plant. Garden centers really gear up for spring, but fall is also a great time to put plants in the ground.
Fall is wonderful because you don't have to water as much. You don't have the loss of water through the leaf transpiration. Once you get your plants planted, you just check sort of what I call rule of thumb. If the soil is damp, you don't water. If it's dry, you give it an occasional watering. It's a great time to Get all of your perennials divided to transplant anything that needs to be transplanted. For example, Japanese maples, you may want to root prune them or transplant them. They're easy to do in the fall. So there's so many things like composting a bed, getting the beds ready for the winter. A lot has to be done now before the ground freezes. January, February, sort of nothing can be done. Then again, March, April, you start again. So gardening slows down, and it's the time to really get those fall things out of the way and get ready for winter when you can do nothing.
Of all the activities that are going on in fall, maintenance-wise in the garden, I think pruning is very high up on that list. Although there's pruning that goes on year-round, and there are things that are more appropriately pruned in spring, and then there's of course maintenance pruning in the summer, and then wonderful opportunities in fall. But when are the appropriate times to prune certain things, and then what times of year should we not prune certain plants?
In the spring of the year, you want to think first of all your flowering shrubs. Do not ever prune the flowering shrubs before they bloom. Remember, you let them finish the blooming, and then you cut them back, and you'll get the new flower for the next year. In the spring, you're going to prune all the flowering shrubs after they bloom. Now, if we go into the summer pruning, you can do sort of a mix of different kinds of pruning because you're not taking it all the way back. You're not cutting it as severely. If you take off the growth, you want to be careful that you don't ever prune over 1/3 of the growth on that plant. If you do, and I've had many clients to tell me, or I've been to their properties, and they said they think their plants are dying, and they want to know why. The reason they are dying, and they're going to die because you have over pruned these plants. Now in the fall, it's the ideal time to prune everything.
It's also worth mentioning that looking at like our summer pruning and going into like late summer, we may not want to prune something, especially like trees, that would force a late flush of growth, because pruning stimulates growth in the plant that could be damaged by frost. And so oftentimes it's wise to pause pruning in getting into like mid-late summer, wait until fall when the trees are starting to go to sleep. That's the best time to prune.
Exactly.
Jim, as you mentioned earlier, fall is the best time of year to prune trees, and there are many reasons for that, not the least of which is that the leaves are off the tree and we can actually see what we're doing, because it's very important the way that we build structure and layers into trees. I'd like for us to specifically talk about Japanese maples, mainly because you've got so many of them here, and it's a tree where it's important for us to really know what we're doing before we get in there with the pruners.
What I like to do first is look at the tree and make sure you look for any dead wood or any diseased wood. You should first take that out, cut all that out. Now, if you have crossing branches, you want to look at the crossing branches and you know one of those has to go. You've got to eliminate it. So what you want to do is select the best branch to leave and prune the other one out. On all of our trees, not just Japanese maples, I'm going to look at the diseased and dying wood. I'm going to look at the crossing branches and take that out. If this limb comes out, normally you're going to have shoots that are going up and you're going to have shoots that are coming down. Remember, you want light to penetrate so that all of this shaded area doesn't kill the leaves below and the branches below. So what you want to do is keep all horizontal limbs in place. If it's coming up, you cut it off. If it's coming down, you remove it. When you're through, you're going to have these layers that look like floating clouds. And throughout the tree, light will penetrate, and instead of you having too much shade below, you're going to get light going into those trees, and you're going to have leaves. This is a good example. Look at this Japanese maple.
Right.
This has been pruned so that all of the limbs coming down and going up are pruned off. The main limb, the branch, all horizontal, is left in place. Now look at the sunlight coming through the tree. You'll always have beautiful light, but it gives it that cloud-like layer, and the tree is going to be much better. Here is a Chinese fringe tree. Same thing, look at the limbs. You're
Right.
doing the same pruning. It doesn't matter what tree you do, you want to prune these in the manner I'm talking about.
Pruning the root system also makes a tree that much healthier because you get those small little fibrous roots that are very important from the standpoint of absorbing the nutrition that's in the soil and also from the standpoint of water absorption. Talk us through how you look at root pruning here at Gibbs Garden.
What we do, of course, November, December are the best months to root prune. The reason is all of your deciduous trees are going to be dropping their leaves and you won't have transpiration going on. So what we like to do is take a shovel, a long spade that's narrow, and you drive it down into the ground so you're actually cutting the roots. Circle around the tree, and you want to start out further, and then if it's a bigger tree, the next year you would come in a little closer. So each time you cut the roots, you're establishing a new root system that has fibrous roots, and it's going to take in more nutrient, more water during the spring, summer, fall. If you want to dig up the tree and transplant it, it's easy to do that because maples, for example, have a very shallow root system. So you can take all that dirt off underneath, plant it with good topsoil, stake it good, and if you've got a good fibrous root system, it will come right back out in the spring and grow. But all plants need to be, I think, root pruned if you can do that. So just think about fall as the ideal time to move any of your plants that you want to move or to do any of your root pruning.
Jim, one of my favorite late summer activities is going through the catalogs and picking out the next exciting bulb that's going to go into my garden because, of course, fall is the best time to plant a bulb. It needs the chilling hours over the winter in order to make a nice strong stem, and of course every bulb has different chilling requirements, but nonetheless we want them in the ground in fall. We can plant out that part of our garden. Common misconception that many people have about bulbs is that fall is also the best time to divide, but that's not true, is it?
No, that's the worst time to divide bulbs. You've got to be able to see where the plant is, and if the bulb is dormant, you might be digging up most of your yard to try to find where you planted them the year before. As you said, it's always best to plant bulbs in the fall and divide in the spring. But if you have daffodils planted, when those daffodils finish their bloom, you've got to watch the foliage. Most people have a tendency to want to cut it off. If the foliage is green, it's storing up enough nutrients for that bulb to produce a flower for the following year. So what you want to do is wait until those leaves turn yellow. If they're yellow, it's okay to dig them up and divide them. You do not have to be careful in digging any bulbs up. You take a shovel and you scoop underneath the bulbs, go down about 8 or 10 inches. You get a clump because first you want to be only digging the bulbs if it's time to divide them.
Right.
Now, once you dig the bulbs up in a clump, you can literally take them and throw them as hard as you can on the ground. You want to bust all the soil off. When you do that, you're going to probably find you've got 50 or 60 bulbs in that one clump. Now, you just separate them. They're real easy because you don't have dirt around them. And you pull them apart, and then you put them in the place where you want to plant them for the following year. So it's real important, plant in the fall, divide in the spring of the year so you know where you're planting your bulbs. Now, one other thing I think that's real important to do, bulbs, they're going to tell you when it's time to divide. Too many people think, well, I'm going to divide every 2 years or 3 years. That's not true. You want to look at a clump, and let's say daffodils again. We've got a clump of daffodils. If the interior daffodils are no longer having flowers and all of the flowers are around the edges, it's telling you it's time to divide me. A lot of daffodils I've had for 10 or 12 years still do not need to be divided. I have flowers in the middle, not as many as on the outside edges. But if they're flowers, you don't have to divide them. But when you have no flowers in the center, for sure you need to divide.
is also a wonderful time to prune perennials, and there are many reasons that we ought to prune perennials, not the least of which is just to tidy the garden up, but also we want to remove plant material that basically is spent so that it doesn't create places where fungus and bacteria can grow and create other problems for our plants. What are some of the plants that, that you think are particularly good for pruning in the fall, Jim?
Well, of course, what I like to do on perennials is look at the entire bed and first design your bed so that you do have a few perennials that you do not cut back. And the reason is you want to create some winter interest. Now, two of my favorites are Russian sage, Paroskia, and my other favorite is Sedum autumn joy. And the reason for that, even in the winter when there is no foliage on the Russian sage, which is right here beside us, these stems will turn more of a silver color. And as November and December go on, it's very silver in color and it's beautiful. And against this stacked stone wall, it shows up well. Now the seed head that you see on the Sedum autumn joy that's behind you, that seed head also has some ornamental interest, and with frost on it in the winter, it's beautiful. A light snow catches in the Sedum autumn joy, it's beautiful. But again, it gives a little structure to your perennial bed in the wintertime. Remember, everything else is going to be cut back on your perennials. Dividing perennials should be done probably once every 3 years, 2 or 3 years. I don't ever do it probably except once every 3 years. If you do that, you're going to have better root structure and you're going to be able to let those plants fill out better and continue to grow, and you're going to have stronger vegetation on the top. So this year happens to be the 3rd year, and it's the year we will cut this back. We will lose our silver stems and we're going to lose our Sedum autumn joy only 1 year. So we have to give that up to do this. So what I would be doing is taking this plant and literally cutting it back, and I actually have some pruners here and I can demonstrate what we would do. So I'm going to take my pruners, and the thing you want to remember, always start with a pair of sharp pruners. But what I would do now is take this, it's got to be manageable, so it isn't going to hurt anything if you take all of this growth on down into here and cut it. You don't have to be careful. It doesn't matter. You're just trying to get some of this out of your way. In fact, let's go on down. There are a lot of forks here. So I'm going to go below all these forks now and make a cut right here and get rid of all those forks. We're going to cut below the forks here. We're going to come right through here. Now we're going to take a shovel. You would dig down around these roots, cut them straight down, sever the root system. Then you're going to take this plant up, and literally where each of these clumps are, you're going to split them, divide them, and you've got a number of plants. We will easily have 1, 2, 3, 4 new plants from where that one plant was. Now we'll put 3 back in each place, and we have a nice clump. So that's the way you would be dividing those.
And I know after you get done with pruning, especially with perennials, but also with trees and shrubs, there's a lot of material that's left over. So we've got all the sticks that we just pruned off, as well as the leaf matter that we're going to rake out of the beds as we're transitioning from fall to winter. And all this gets composted here, right?
We compost all of this, and you can imagine, look at the leaves we have.
Right.
We have piles of leaves. We will get, for compost for this year, I'm talking about it 6 cubic, if you say a 6 cubic truckload, we'll probably have 100 truckloads of composted leaves and debris that we've composted 1 year. We pile those leaves up. We try not to get any higher than about 4 or 5 feet. But in 1 year, it's completely composted to a black dirt. I mean, it looks like the richest, blackest dirt you've ever seen. You want to put about 3 or 4 inches thick. So this entire bed would be composted. Then you take a pitchfork and you just stick it down on the ground, move it back and forth this way. You want the compost to be able to work its way down into the clay that would be down deeper. And you also would be able to have moisture into the compost and to break all of that up for better drainage. So it's important to compost the bed, not for just the nutrients, but to also break up the soil for good aeration and good drainage. That's as important as anything on the bed.
Great. Well, Jim, those are wonderful tips and tons of information there. Really, really appreciate spending the day with you and sharing your garden with us. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Each week we travel the country north to south, east to west, visiting some of the most exciting gardens, as well as talking to industry horticulturalists about design principles, new plants, and also how you can be most successful with your home gardens. We also love answering your gardening questions, so visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com.
Bring the outdoors into your everyday life. Bass Pro Shops can outfit all your adventures, even those in your backyard. Bass Pro Shops, your adventure starts here.
A preformed hedge unit with 4 plants grown together, ready to plant. Instant Hedge, designed to create a finished look after installation.
The Jaguar F-Pace.
Today we visited with expert horticulturalist and garden designer Jim Gibbs to discuss the many exciting things that go on in the winter garden. If you have questions about anything you've seen today, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So join us next week for more great gardening tips and ideas as we garden smart.